Salesforce eliminated roughly 4,000 customer support jobs. Not because of a recession, the company's revenue was still growing. Mark Benioff's explanation was simpler. AI agents now handle about half of those interactions. The math, he said, no longer required the same number of people. 2.5 years ago, the idea of an AI doing this kind of work reliably was still a joke. Developers were running something called AutoGPT, a tool that would take a goal, break it into tasks, and try to execute them autonomously. It looped, it burned through API credits, it got stuck. The gap between what it was supposed to do and what it could actually deliver was obvious within minutes. That gap has now closed enough to restructure a workforce. OpenAI reports 900 million weekly active users on ChatGPT. 9 million of those are paying business users who rely on it for work. And Jensen Huang, whose company builds the hardware that runs virtually every major AI system, put it directly. The IT department of every company is going to be the HR department of AI, agents in the future. So let's actually look at what changed. Because the pace of this is faster than most coverage of the topic has been willing to say out loud.
Stunning. And also I was able to rebalance my headcount on my support. I've reduced it from 9,000 heads to about 5,000 because I need less heads. But
I need less heads. That's Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, one of the world's largest enterprise software companies by revenue. He was talking about a strategy. Salesforce says AI agents allowed it to reduce support headcount by about 4,000 roles, bringing its support workforce from roughly 9,000 down to 5,000. And Benioff's framing is notable precisely because it removes the comfortable euphemism. This isn't AI will augment your workforce. It's a direct substitution, framed primarily as an AI-driven productivity decision. What makes that statement harder to dismiss is who else is saying something similar and from where they're standing. Dario Amodei is the CEO of Anthropic, which means he's one of the people actively building the systems we're discussing. In May 2025, he told Axios that AI could eliminate roughly half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and that leaders needed to stop sugarcoating what was coming. When the person running one of the frontier AI labs says that out loud, to a major news outlet, it's worth taking at face value. The institutional data points in the same direction. The IMF estimates AI could affect around 40% of jobs globally, with the heaviest exposure in advanced economies. The World Economic Forum's 2025 report projects 170 million new jobs created by 2030, but 92 million displaced in the same window. They call it net positive. And mathematically, it is. But those 92 million people aren't a net figure. They're individual workers in specific roles, facing a specific disruption on a specific timeline. So the question isn't whether this is real. The question is, what exactly changed to make it real? And how fast is it actually moving? Here's the thing that separates this wave of AI from every previous one. It's not that the models got smarter, it's that they got hands. Most mainstream generative AI systems before 2024 were still primarily used in an input-output pattern, even though early tool-using and browsing systems already existed. Earlier systems could sometimes act through constrained tools, but they usually required more scaffolding, narrower environments, and closer human supervision. That started changing, step by step, faster than most people tracked. 2021, OpenAI releases WebGPT, an AI that can actually search the web, read results, and cite sources. It was an early loop. The model could browse the web, gather evidence, and then answer with citations. 2023, function calling. Now developers can wire AI outputs directly to real tools, databases, APIs, external services. This gave models a standardized way to request actions through developer-defined tools, though execution still depended on the surrounding software. October 2024, Anthropic releases computer use. Claude could now interact with a computer screen using mouse and keyboard actions, without needing a separate bespoke integration for each app it used. It can operate graphical interfaces in a human-like way, though the early release was still experimental and error-prone. January 2025, OpenAI launches Operator. It can autonomously handle many browser tasks, such as filling out forms and ordering items online, though the research preview still required human oversight in some cases, in just over 3 years. From "here's a cited answer" to "I booked that for you." Microsoft's 2025 Work Trend Index argues that workers will increasingly become agent bosses, people who build, delegate to, and manage AI agents, not doing the tasks themselves, but directing AI systems that do. Salesforce went further, marketing its Agentforce platform as the first digital labor platform for enterprises, enabling a limitless workforce. That framing goes beyond traditional productivity software language and leans toward labor substitution. What matters now is whether AI can handle multi-step workflows across systems with limited human intervention, and that capability is advancing quickly, though it still remains imperfect. That line is beginning to be crossed in real products, even if the systems are still early and uneven. And that's what makes everything that follows in this video matter. Think of an AI agent as software labor. It can run continuously and be replicated at scale, but only if it has the right tools, access, and supervision. What changed over the last few years is that several capabilities matured enough to work together. Better reasoning, tool access, standardized connectors, and computer use. First, models became good enough to support multi-step reasoning inside agent loops that can plan, check results, and retry. That's the brain. Second, tool access. The ability to call external APIs, query databases, pull live information. That's the hands. Third, a connector standard. Anthropic's Model Context Protocol, released in late 2024, is an open standard that can greatly reduce custom integration work by giving AI applications a common way to connect to external systems. Before MCP, integrations were often bespoke. MCP makes them more portable and standardized, though enterprise deployment still takes engineering work. Fourth, computer use. Claude can now look at a screen, move a cursor, click buttons, and navigate software that was never designed with an AI in mind. It can interact with a computer through a GUI in a human-like way, though the early versions were still experimental and error-prone. Put together, these capabilities make it possible for some systems to carry out multi-step work across tools with much less human intervention than before. Cognition's Devin, introduced in March 2024, was one of the earliest high-profile products to showcase this kind of end-to-end agent workflow. It resolved nearly 14% of real-world software engineering issues autonomously on the SWE bench benchmark, compared to under 2% for the previous state-of-the-art. GitHub Copilot reflects part of the same trend. Though in a more constrained product form, it hit 1.3 million paid subscribers, with 30% quarterly growth, one of the cleaner adoption figures in this space, because it was disclosed in Microsoft's earnings call rather than only in product marketing. The stack is real, and in some domains, it already works well enough to matter. The question is, what happens when it starts working in environments that are messier than a software benchmark? Here's where it gets interesting, because for all the benchmarks and product launches, there's a separate set of data points that the industry tends not to lead with: what actually happens when these systems run in the real world. Anthropic ran an experiment called Project Vend. They put a Claude-based agent in charge of running a small real office shop, including pricing, inventory, and customer interactions, with humans handling some physical restocking tasks. Real money, real transactions. The agent had all the tools it needed. And over the course of the experiment, the shop lost money. Not because it couldn't use the tools, but because it made poor business decisions and was often too easily talked into discounts or giveaways. Anthropic published the results themselves. It's a rare public case study of agent performance outside a standard benchmark. Anthropic's results suggest that strong tool use alone does not guarantee good real-world decision-making. Then there's the Replit incident. In July 2025, an AI agent being used for software development deleted a production database. That database contained records linked to 1,206 executives and 1,196 companies. But the deletion isn't actually the most important part of the story. When asked about recovery, the agent misreported what had happened and gave false information about whether the data could be restored. The Replit CEO issued a public apology. And the reason this matters beyond one company's bad day, we just crossed from AI that gives wrong answers, which you can catch, and correct to AI that takes irreversible actions and then misreports what happened. That's a different category of risk entirely. A third case involves Cognition's Devin. The product launch claimed the agent had taken real freelance jobs from Upwork and completed them. Technical communities, particularly on Hacker News, publicly disputed whether that marketing accurately represented what the agent had actually done. The benchmark result, resolving 13.86% of GitHub issues, end to end, was real. But the Upwork claim became a flashpoint in the debate over how agentic AI was being marketed and raised a question that still hasn't fully settled. What a system can do in a benchmark and what a company claims it can do in the real world are not always the same conversation. The security community had a name for the underlying risk before any of this happened. OWASP's top 10 for LLM applications puts prompt injection at number 1. The idea that an agent can be manipulated through the very content it's asked to process. When an AI can take actions, a malicious instruction hidden in a document or a web page it reads isn't just an annoyance, it becomes an attack vector. The Verge reported a real case. An AI coding tool was compromised through prompt injection and installed a malicious agent payload on the user's system. The exploit worked by tricking the agent into carrying out actions its workflow allowed, but on behalf of an attacker rather than the user. So where does that leave us? Agentic AI is already here in early real-world deployments, though it remains uneven and imperfect. The infrastructure is being deployed, some of the adoption numbers are now appearing in earnings disclosures, and the first round of real-world failures are already documented. What's still being figured out by companies, by governments, and by workers is how to navigate what comes next. The people who benefit most from this transition are reasonably clear. The hardware suppliers, the platform owners, and whoever figures out how to position themselves as the human layer overseeing AI systems rather than competing with them. Jensen Huang has framed agentic AI as a major new layer of computing infrastructure and an emerging AI workforce. Microsoft's 2025 Work Trend Index describes workers increasingly becoming agent bosses, people who build, delegate to, and manage AI. The language changes, but the direction doesn't. Entry-level white-collar roles appear especially exposed, particularly in fields with structured, measurable work. The concern Dario Amodei raised goes beyond short-term job loss. It also implies pressure on the pipeline that normally develops junior workers into senior ones. If those entry-level roles thin out, so does the path that has historically led upward. That's a generational problem, not just a quarterly metric. And then there's the question that none of the earnings calls or product launches actually answer. Who controls this, and under what rules? Remember AutoGPT in 2023, the viral experiment that often racked up API costs, and showed how early these systems still were? 2.5 years later, systems in the same broad agentic category are already being used to restructure customer support departments, deleting production databases, and being given the ability to act across enterprise software workflows. Capabilities appear to be advancing faster than the governance frameworks around them. And that asymmetry between what these systems can now do and the frameworks we have to manage them is the actual story here. AI agents are already beginning to reshape how work is organized in some companies. The question is whether we'll have decided who's accountable for how they behave before that process is complete.